And I know he would have been there, and he wasn't there, and that worried me a lot. Just a minute. Hold on. Anyway.
Hey there guys, welcome to Darker Reality. Today we are looking at the case of Daniel Brophy and his wonderful wife, Nancy Crampton Brophy, who you have just seen giving a stellar performance in court. As always, viewers' discretion is advised as some details may get a little graphic, but with that said, let's jump into the case. Daniel Craig Brophy was born on the 27th of June 1954 in Barnes County, North Dakota. He went by the name of Dan, and from all the evidence I could gather, was a lovely person. He graduated from the University of Sioux Falls in 1976 and then went on to have a very long and very happy career as a chef. He worked as a chef for 30 years, and then this blended with also becoming a culinary instructor. He still worked as a chef, but then was also teaching for another 20 years. So he was in the catering business for 50 years, and he absolutely loved his job. He married his first wife, Perla Gonzalez, and they had a son called Nathaniel. In the early 1990s, he was running a class at Le Cordon Bleu College of Culinary Arts in Portland, and this is where he met Nancy Crampton. Nancy was born on the 16th of June 1950, and she originated from Wichita Falls in Texas. She graduated from the University of Houston, and she had decided that she wanted to take a year off. She moved to Oregon, and in her words, the thought of culinary school seemed fun, so she decided to do a course at a culinary school, and I say this is where her and Dan first met. So Dan was still married to Perla at the time, and I couldn't find a divorce date, and at some point his and Perla's marriage finished. They got divorced. Nathaniel went and lived with his mum, but he still had a good relationship from what I can gather with his dad. He still had a lot of one-on-one time. They would forage and things like that together, so he still had that relationship. But in 1999 Dan and Nancy got married, and they decided to settle in the Portland area. And they built what seems to have been from the outside, they seem to have built an amazing life. They lived in a good-sized house. They had land around them. Dan had his chickens and his turkeys, and his vegetable garden. He'd had a collection of vegetable gardens over the years, and this one was spectacular. He was very, very proud of it. In 2006, he started working as a culinary instructor for the Oregon Culinary Institute, and he loved his job. He loved cooking, he loved teaching, he loved helping people. The produce that he was growing and the animals that he was raising, he would sell to his students at discount rates instead of them having to buy produce at the rates that the shops were selling it, to ensure that they always had fresh produce. At the time of his death, he was also working part-time as head chef for his friend's restaurant. I think he was even doing this for free to help his friend out. He also helped out at homeless shelters, like dishing out food, and at Thanksgivings, like this was just this warms my heart. At Thanksgiving, he used to have a pie bake-off with his students, and this would involve them baking as many pies as they possibly could over a certain amount of time, but then at the end of that, the pies were not for them. They would gather all the pies up, and then Dan would spend the rest of the holiday going around the Portland area and giving out the pies to the needy. This man was just a wonderful human being. And he thought he was living his best life. He was in a job that he loved. He was helping people. One of the things that he absolutely hated was to see people struggling. And so to be in a role where he could help people was just absolutely fantastic for him. He was just, I say, living his best life. However, Nancy doesn't seem to have been in the same category. She seemed to be in a state where she found her life bland and boring. She had tried to run a catering business in the early 2000s, which had gone wrong, and unfortunately had left a fair amount of debt. She was the person who paid the bills. She looked after the household. She was what Dan would call management, and she had control of the finances, but she wasn't as frugal as Dan. Dan was quite happy to live off the land and be as frugal as possible. So Nancy seems to be more materialistic. At the time of Dan's death, she was working in insurance. I did find evidence to say that she didn't really do much in her job, and apart from selling a couple of policies to friends and family, she didn't sell anything else. But her main passion was writing, and Dan supported this. He wanted her to be as lucky as him and to be able to work and do something that she loved. So she tried to get published the traditional way, contacted agents, and was turned down several times. It is something that a lot of writers go through, and it does suck. But Nancy wasn't very good with rejection. She was in a writers group with other romance writers, and she found it very difficult coping with the jealousy when their work was being recognised and hers wasn't. She had quite a narcissistic attitude in her writing, and believes that her writing is top tier and better than everybody else's. She did go on to publish, I believe it was 6 or 7, there may be more, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, books. She self-published them. So it's such titles as The Wrong Husband. There was a whole collection of The Wrong Somebody. And I tried to read the beginning of The Wrong Husband and my brain fell out my ear very quickly. It's unfortunately not great writing. She received at maximum 20 reviews on her books. I think she self-published through Amazon. They were on Amazon. And the reviews were not kind. They were not kind. But she still believed that she was better than everybody else, and still kept writing. She started her own website to advertise her writing. She even tried to give teaching tips. In 2011, she posted an essay called How to Kill Your Husband, a title that would come back and bite her in the butt, that's for definite. But let me read you a couple of excerpts from this, just so you get an understanding of her writing ability. It's probably as good as her acting ability that you saw at the beginning. After all, if murder is supposed to set me free, I certainly don't want to spend any time in jail. Divorce is expensive, and do you really want to split your possessions? I find it easier to wish people dead than to worry about blood and brains splattered on my walls. And really, I'm not good at remembering lies. But the thing I know about murder is that every one of us have it in us when pushed far enough. Talk about fucking foreshadowing. You're not supposed to foreshadow life, you know? That's a literary thing. Anyway, so due to her materialistic lifestyle, she had managed to run up a lot of debt, and it's unclear how much Dan was aware of this. So in a way to deal with this, she took out several life policies on Dan. But these policies were like they were spending about $1,000 a month on the premiums for these policies. What could be seen from these was that they were actually like using a savings account, pay a premium every year until you've paid for 20 odd years and then get all of the money back, kind of thing. So realistically, she'd have been financially better off leaving him alive. But I think, from my personal judgment, I think she grew impatient. So she decided, at some point, that if Dan wasn't around and she was able to claim the insurance money, life would be better. I don't know why she couldn't have just divorced him and sold the house and split the money, but apparently that wasn't a thing that she was going to do. So, the build-up to the event. It wasn't a spontaneous crime, from what I have seen. She had started researching untraceable guns, also known as ghost guns. These are fully functioning weapons that are not serialized, so they can't be traced. And so she was researching for a book on how these worked. And apparently she was developing this plot line that a woman was going to receive a part of a gun every new chapter, and this was going to be the story arc and the character arc and everything else, and it was all going to build at the same time that she was building this gun. There are no notes on this, I'd just like to say. The idea was all in her head, but she hadn't written any notes. So although this gun existed and this research existed, there were no notes taken. So she actually purchased a gun. Now, they were in dire straits. They had no money, but somehow she managed to spend $15,000 on a Glock 17. I don't know guns, but I know that that's a handgun. She also purchased a spare barrel and a spare slide for the same gun. Now, I kind of think this is clever, but at the same time dumb. So there is a trace of these purchases. You can see that she's made these purchases, but it appears that she made these purchases so that after she had shot the gun, she could replace the barrel, replace the slider, and make it look like the gun had never been shot. If there had been no trace of her purchases, and if she had fitted the pieces properly, maybe she'd have got away with it. I'm just saying, it's clever. It's not something I'd heard of people doing. It's clever, but she was dumb. So as well as researching the gun itself, she also researched how to clean the Glock, how to load the Glock, how to disassemble and reassemble the Glock. So thorough research, but of course it was all for her book. No other purpose. And then the Glock itself lived on a shelf in their wardrobe. As I said, Dan was not a fan of guns, so he didn't want anything to do with it, and Nancy just left it on the shelf. As I said earlier in the video, I think Nancy grew impatient, waiting for the years to pass by for her to get the money from the insurance policies. She seemed to want to live the life of a famous author, whatever that might be. She bought herself lavish gifts and lied to Dan that she was getting promotions and bonuses from work. And just the debt piled up and up and up. And then on the 2nd of June 2018, it came to a head, and this is where the events of this awful crime took place. So Dan woke up on the morning of the 2nd of June and had his shower and went off to work like he normally would. He left home at 7 a.m. and went to the institute. He was the only person at the institute at that time of the morning, and he entered the premises, turned off the alarms, and got to prepping everything for his students. The students were due at 8 a.m. And so he was filling water and ice trays, so he was around the sink area when somebody came in behind him, shot him in the back of the head, and then after he had collapsed and rolled over, they shot him in the chest. At 8 a.m. when students arrived, they found him on the floor and unresponsive. He was still alive at this point, and they called 911.
911. Hi, we are at Oregon Culinary Institute, and there is somebody collapsed in one of our kitchens.
Okay,
one
just
of our
one
chefs.
moment. And
He's one of our chefs, and he's an older man.
all right, is he conscious right now?
No, he is not conscious.
Okay, is he breathing?
No, he is not breathing.
Okay. And is anyone doing CPR?
Yes, yes.
Okay, someone's doing CPR right now.
Yep.
Do they need instructions?
Do you need instruction, or do you need her?
Are they doing compressions
Okay,
only?
she's doing compressions, and I can switch out too if you need to, because I'm CPR certified.
Okay.
Okay, he's bleeding out of what? Okay, he's bleeding out of his chest.
Bleeding out of his chest? Okay.
Yeah.
Does he
just started bleeding.
Okay, is someone still doing CPR?
Yes. No, should she keep going? The ribs are broken. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Ma'am.
Okay. All right. Is someone still doing anything or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, she's still doing compressions.
Okay. All right.
Does she need to continue?
Whatever she feels comfortable doing.
Whatever you feel comfortable doing. Do you want me to turn out? Do you want me to take a turn?
They'll be there. They're coming really fast. They'll be there any second.
They're going to be here any second.
I know. You're doing a good job. I know. You're doing a good job, okay? Someone's on.
As you can hear, it's just an awful thing for them to have to go through. They're wanting to save him, and just blood is spilling from his body. By the time the paramedics arrived, which was just minutes later, he had passed away. Nancy swears that she was in bed, that she was not yet awake, and that she woke up and someone informed her to turn on the news and that something had happened at the institute. So she turned on the news and she spoke with Dan's mum, which, oh god, this was awful. She actually said that she phoned Dan's mum so that someone else could worry apart from her.
I said, I don't even know why I'm calling you. It's just I wanted somebody to worry besides me.
Which I thought was just disgraceful, because Dan's mum, like, Dan was 63 when he was shot. So his mum would have been, what, in her 80s? And Nancy thought it was appropriate to phone his mum before confirmation from the police to make her worry. I I know that she knew he was dead, and I know that obviously his mum was going to find out very soon that it was Dan that had been shot. But for some reason that sat really badly with me. I'm like, why would you put that much stress onto an 80-plus-year-old woman's shoulders? Like, I'm sure she was pretty stressed on her own anyway, because she'd seen that there had been a shooting. Anyway, so Nancy gets told to go to the college. So she rocks up. And the police, like, she just says, "Hi, I'm Nancy Brophy," and they're like, oh, right, we'll talk to you in a minute. And so she, like, even if she didn't know what was happening, she'd be really fucking sus by now anyway. But, she took, like, I think they said she took about 10 minutes in conversation with the police before she asked what had happened and if it was Dan. 10 minutes. And then when she was told, she was like, well, I kind of got that from everybody's sad sack expressions. There was no, like, immediate grief. I'm not being funny, but if my partner died, I would probably fall to the floor in grief. So to me, she did not do a good job of being the grieving widow. At one point she was like, all I want is him back, and that can't happen. No, because you shot him. I found it really, really hard as well, actually, because, like, he was such a good guy, and from what I could find, and he was just this wonderful person, and he thought he had this wonderful life and was happy, and the last thing he would have seen before he died was his wife shooting him. Like, she shot him in the back, and I was like, it doesn't make it better. He still would have died, but if she'd shot him twice in the back and he'd passed away, it would have felt, I don't know, it would have felt better to me, because he rolled over and he saw this woman who he loved and adored, and she was the reason that he died. And oh my god, it just eats away at me that the last thing he saw before dying was probably, like, some form of hatred or disgust, or even just, like, complete blankness on her face. We don't know what she looked like, or how upset she was, or whatever, or how callous she looked, but that's the last thing he would have seen before he passed away. And it just like breaks my heart as to him having to have gone through that. They then had a vigil for him, for, like, friends and family and students to all attend, to say goodbye. And Nancy didn't appear grieving. I mean, you could obviously put it down to everybody reacts in different ways. You don't know how you're going to react until you're put in a certain situation. But she stood there, like, almost smiling, as if, like, because she was, like, very much the centre of attention that day. Everyone was very protective of her, everyone was around her, because she's the grieving widow. She is not the murder suspect at this point. She is the victim's wife. She is to be looked after at all times. She is going through the worst thing you could go through. So she was, like, surrounded by people, but she almost was smirking at times. It's really, really odd. Now, she wasn't at first a suspect. She was at home. This happened. This was not something that she had anything to do with. But then she really fucked up. Like, really, really effed up. She called the investigators. I think it was like 3 days after Dan had died. She called the investigators and asked for a letter. Now, I can't do this justice, so I'm just going to play you the clip so you can hear exactly what she asked for and how she asked for it.
I don't want to be the stupid question of the day, but I think I need to be the stupid question of the day. So
Okay.
my insurance company said, well, just have the detective write a letter that you're no longer a suspect. And I said, man, I just don't know that he's there. And I'm not sure that he looks at it that way. But if you do, I'd get you to write the letter. My sister, when I told her this as a lawyer, laughed so hard she fell out of the chair. So
Why
because
why would you need that?
because they don't want to pay if it turns out that I secretly slipped down to the school and shot my husband because I thought, hey, going into old age without Dan after 25 years, it's really what I'm looking for, you know?
Okay. Well, we never would do something like that. I
really didn't think so.
Yeah, I mean, that's not something that we never do something like that. That's never been done. I've never heard of that being done.
I was shocked when he told me this. And the other thing he says, well, I said, so what happens if, in fact, based upon your, and this is such a stupid little policy, I can't believe they're making me jump through the hoops like this. This is only $40,000.
If she hadn't have done this, if she hadn't have asked for this letter, I don't know, I mean, she probably would have still been suspected, but she wouldn't have been suspected as quickly. They may not have looked into her as quickly. Who does this? Who does this? Oh, it's only for 40 grand. 40 grand's a lot of money. In total, the insurance policies and the sale of the house and everything, she was looking to get between $800,000 and $1.4 million, roughly. So she was due to inherit a lot of money. She would have been plain sailing. She would have been able to live her life of luxury and not have to worry again if she'd been successful. So there is your motive. I mean, do you need anything else as a motive? Unhappy wife, money. Boring, bland life, money. Like, it writes itself. This could possibly be the plot of one of her awful, awful books. And then the police discovered camera footage of her vehicle in the area of the college just before and just after the shooting. And when confronted with this, she said that she must have gone to Starbucks but forgot. Because she's getting old, and one of the things that goes as you get older is your memory. Yet she told numerous stories in pinpoint accuracy. Remembered every little detail of everything else. But her memory was going and she didn't remember if she'd used her car. Nathaniel even said that he tried to call her that morning before hearing about the shooting, just to try and get in contact with her, and she didn't answer the phone because she wasn't there. It took the police 3 months of collecting evidence, but they then arrested Nancy on suspicion of murdering her husband. The case that the prosecutors put together was actually a lot of circumstantial evidence. There was her writing. They had to they ended up scrubbing the essay How to Kill Your Husband from evidence because it was written like 7 years before the killing, so that was taken out as evidence. But they had the Glock, they had her search history, they had her van being there at the time, they had her knowledge of the college and the fact that there was no CCTV cameras and that nobody else would be there at that time in the morning and that he would have turned off the alarms. So it was all circumstantial. And then Nancy took the stand and she dug herself a grave. Really, really, really deep, deep grave. She showed very little emotion when talking about Dan. I mean, this was 4 years after he died, but you should still have some emotion about the love of your life after they have died. You're obviously not going to be like a wreck anymore, hopefully, but there should still be some form of emotion. And she was she was practically flat, like there was nothing. Very, very factual about everything. She was asked to name 5 things that she loved about him, and her main thing was that he loved her.
Can you tell us 5 things about him, maybe 5 things that separated him from the pack for you? He was smart. He was really smart. And he was funny. I laughed all the time when I was with him, and a lot of people going, "What'd he say? What'd he say? What'd he say?" Because he was very dry in his sense of humor. He was kind. He was so kind. That probably won me over more than lots of other things might have. He not only thought outside the box, this man lived outside the box. He really did not operate going forward the way most of us did. But the thing I probably liked the best about him, he loved me. And if that isn't a big number one item, I don't know what is.
She was asked how she felt about bringing a gun into the house and now it not protecting them. And we get some great theatrics.
After you learned that your husband had been killed with a gun, how did you feel about your decision to buy a gun?
Well, in the lighter moments, I thought it was karma kicking me in the ass. But in the heavier moments, I thought, we own a gun and it didn't protect us. We bought a gun to protect us and it didn't do its job. Sorry.
You told the police that...
Wait, I need to wait just a minute.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm me.
And everything was very, very rehearsed with her attorney. And there were even points where she was laughing. Like, right at the beginning, she was like, I'd say you could read my lips, but you wouldn't be able to. And I don't know if that was because, like, she's got no lips, or if there was another reason for this, but she laughed. Who laughs when they're on the stand discussing the fact that they may have killed their husband? Who laughs? Just, no. And then, yeah, I mean, she told memories of Dan and how they got together, and it was very, very factual and very limited amount of emotion. But when she was talking about her writing, she was very emotive. Her writing meant something to her. Her writing means something to her. And it shows the difference of how she felt about Dan in comparison, which, again, is just horrible. It's like, if you didn't love the guy, why didn't you just leave? Or at least discuss leaving somehow or something. Murder is not an option. It's not like, oh, well, I just couldn't be bothered to get divorced. I didn't want to hurt him, so I thought I'd kill him instead. What? No. And then after all of her theatrics with her defense attorney, she then faced cross-examination from prosecution. And she didn't do very well. Her whole demeanor changed when she was being thrown questions that she had not prepared the answers for.
You would agree that you're driving around and in front of the Culinary Institute at the exact time that Dan is being murdered?
No, actually, I don't agree with that. I was driving around for a full hour before Dan got murdered. I was down there before Dan ever got to school. I was driving around writing for a full hour. I was only in that vicinity for 6 minutes, and I don't know that Dan was murdered in that 6 minutes. We agree that he was murdered in that time frame, but in terms of when he arrived and shortly thereafter, but whether it was not in that 6 minutes or not, I don't know.
I'm sorry, did you just say that you were driving around writing?
Yes, that's what I was doing. was driving around writing. I testified to that yesterday, that I would find a place to park and I'd jot down ideas.
I thought you didn't know that you were driving. So if you do not know, you have no memory of driving around downtown on the morning of June 2nd, how can you sit here today and say that I was driving around writing?
Because if I was down there, that's what I was doing. And you're right, I stand corrected that I should have answered the question differently and said, I don't know.
Without preparation, she was unable to be any type of convincing. I mean, she wasn't convincing when she was in the against defense, but I would assume she believed she was, because she thought she was amazing, and she probably thought that she was a lot more intelligent than everybody on the jury and everybody in the court, therefore she was going to get away with it. But she just did not come across as innocent. She came across as very cold, calculated, and that this was done purely for financial gain. It's a very sad case. Like, she may have had potential as a writer. I mean, if she'd taken criticism and had worked on her writing, maybe she would have had more. Maybe she would have actually had a future ahead of her. She definitely had a type of story in her brain. She wrote romantic novels, like a romantic erotic fiction. She was a horny bitch. And I think this was in response to her being bored in her normal life. But she could have had potential. She could have got divorced. She could have lived a happy life. She could have got divorced, sold a house, split the money with Dan, and gone off and lived the life that she wanted to live. Dan would have probably just downsized and started another vegetable garden. I think obviously he would have been sad, but I think he would have just got on with it. But no, the fact that she took matters into her own hands and decided to take his life for what can only be seen as financial gain it's just heartbreaking. It's just awful. She has never admitted to the crime, and therefore if there was any other motive, we don't know what that could be. So we are speculating, I guess, that it's financial, but speculation is all we've got, so that's what we go with. So 2022, 4 years after Dan's death, Nancy was found guilty of second-degree murder and given life imprisonment with a chance of parole after 25 years. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, she would have been 71? So 25 years, she won't be a risk to anybody after 25 years if she does get parole, if she's still alive at 25 years. But what do you think? Do you think she was guilty? Do you think she did it? Do you think her theatrics were actually real and I'm just being really harsh? Let me know in the comments what you think. But on that note, that is the end of this video. Thank you for watching. If you haven't done so already, make sure you click the like and the subscribe button to help us out. Be good to yourselves, have a good and safe week, and I will see you in the next video.